Be the boys. Be the boys. Be the boys. Be the boys.
This is Ghost of Tsushima. It's a fun samurai game. I tell you what, right, dear viewer, if you want to play a fun samurai game, if you're sat there thinking, you know what, I feel like I might have fun if I played a fun samurai game, then Ghost of Tsushima is almost certainly the game for you. It might still not be the game for you, but there's a better chance of it being the game for you than it is for someone who thinks to themselves, the last thing I want to do today is play a fun samurai game. So that's my recommendation. 8 out of 10, Game of the Year. Ghost of Tsushima is a good game. It's done by Sucker Punch, then what done on Infamous and Sly Cooper and all of that. This is a little different from their usual beat, in that it's not big and bold and over the top and comic booky. It's a lot more serious, a lot more stoic, sometimes to a fault. If I'm to have one major criticism of Ghost of Tsushima, it's that it's so overly serious that there's not a lot of enjoyment to be had in engaging with the story all that much. All of the characters are serious. That's their personality trait. Serious. Eventually, hours in, you get into, like, a plucky comic relief character who is just that cowardly, useless, squeaky-voiced merchant character that you've seen in all the video games, every game that's ever been made. Outside of that, outside of a, frankly, dull and dreary story for the most part, and characters that all have the exact same, character, Ghost of Tsushima is really enjoyable. The fun of the gameplay is at odds with the relentlessly solemn nature of the plot. Ghost of Tsushima is a real ruddy good laugh, and you can have a giggle whether you're being an honourable, upfront, face-me-if-you-dare style samurai, or a sneaky little assassin hiding in the grass and stabbing people in the head and neck, as you do. Taking place in an absolutely fucking gorgeous open world. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but my God, the visuals are stunning. But taking place in this open world island of Tsushima, you play as Jin, who can approach battles, can approach challenges in one of two main ways. Either, as I said, the honourable way of the samurai, or you could shoot people in the throat with arrows. You're cool. What's really good about Ghost of Tsushima is you are not locked into any one style of play. You can mix and match, switch between the two, however much you want. As you unlock skill points and invest them into various abilities, you can, of course, choose to focus on a particular path. You can unlock ghost abilities, which will give you all of your stealth, all of your dishonourable stuff. Or you can unlock combat stances and blocking and parrying and dodging abilities so that you can, look after yourself in upfront melee. Personally, I adopted a more balanced approach, so I've distributed my skill points fairly evenly, which really matches how I like to play any game that offers me the choice. I like to use some stealth to thin out the herd, and then when the odds are evened, or tipped ever so slightly in my favour, then I will bravely come out and fight people. And Ghost of Tsushima allows you to do that. In truth, all of the stealth, the sneaking, all of the ghost abilities are far less interesting than the straightforward combat approach. It's not that it's bad, it's just fairly bog standard for the most part, hiding in tall grass, scoring shots with a bow, sneaking up behind enemies and pressing a button to assassinate them. It's all straightforward open world stealth stuff. All of it very well done, all of it rock solid mechanically, but there is something bold in going up to an enemy bandit camp, the type you've seen in all sorts of open world games where you're expected to sneak around and pick off your opponents carefully one by one, being careful not to set off any alarms, or you can ride your fucking horse right up to the front of that camp, press the standoff button when you're prompted to do so, and then challenge everyone to come out and have a fucking go. And that leads us to the standoff feature. Now, if you approach a group of enemies, you may get a prompt telling you that you can stand off. You just press a button, and then Jin will challenge the opponents to open combat. I'd like the standoff button to be a little more reliable. Sometimes it doesn't appear when you feel like it should, but most of the time it does what it's supposed to do. You approach a group, you press the standoff button. The standoff button is also great as a means of saying that you meant to do something. It's basically an I meant to do that command. If you're spotted by enemies you didn't see, and you were trying to be stealthy, but the standoff button pops up, you can just press it and say, I meant to do that. Of course I was always going to challenge them honourably. And as for honourable combat, let's get into that bit. So if you opt for the standoff, you and a single enemy will come face to face, then you've got to hold down a button and then wait for the enemy to attack before releasing the button, at which point you instantly slash them open, and it's brilliant. If you fuck up, then they will take you down to a sliver of health. So don't do that. Now, you don't have to do the standoff, of course. You can just run in and start hacking and slashing, but either way, eventually, when you get into the thick of a fight, you're going to have to deal with multiple opponents at once. And from there, it's a case of being patient while also being aggressive. It's an interesting balance. Enemies will attack. You've got a chance to parry their attacks, of course, if you time your blocks just right. And it's, again, always magnificent. One of the things about Ghost of Tsushima is just how satisfying the combat is. Now, the word satisfying is thrown around a lot, but in this case, there is such an exquisite rhythm to the combat that you really get into. And the audio-visual feedback is just stellar. When you perform a perfect parry move, you know it. The game will let you know with sound and the slowing of time, and then it flows perfectly right back into the regular combat. The way it flows is, I mean, it's wonderful to see in action, and mechanically, tactilely, feels just as good as it looks. There are 4 main enemy types, determined mostly by the weapons they have. You've got sword wielders, you've got people with pole arms or axes, you've got big heavy brute type enemies, and you've got people with shields. As you progress through the game, you unlock new stances. Each stance is specifically designed to counter a particular enemy type. So also during combat, while you're parrying and dodging and attacking, you're also frequently switching stances to meet the enemies that come and face you. Sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming when there are all sorts of enemy types and all sorts of weapons at your disposal, all sorts of ghost tricks, all sorts of stances. It can be a little much. And the downside to a game that feels so good to play in the first place is that when you do screw up, it feels skin-crawlingly awful. But when you get into that fluidity of the combat and you get a good handle on where your stances are, what you've got to do to switch between them, what weapons you can deploy at a moment's notice, it's one of the most fun action game combat systems I think I've played in years. Honestly, it could just benefit from the camera being a little more helpful. Stealth is fun, combat is excellent, the open world nature of the game is, I mean, it's full of busy work, you know, the kind of thing. Enemy camps, glorified radio towers to climb, dozens and dozens of collectibles so strewn about the map as to be off-putting. It's all fine, you know, it can be a little bit dreary at times, but it's got that, I mean, basically, Ghost of Tsushima in this regard is like an Assassin's Creed game, but good. It's Assassin's Creed with a more sensible scaling back of the sheer overwhelming amount of busy work. I mean, Tsushima's full of nebulous bullshit, but not that much. It's an Assassin's Creed game with a far better combat system. It's an Assassin's Creed that looks better and isn't monetized to fuck. And it's not published by Ubisoft, which, especially right now, is only ever a plus. I wish I'd captured more footage of the first area of this game, because I'm not quite sure all of the footage I have right now quite does justice to how beautiful this game can be. The visuals I'm showing are really good, like the way the grass blows with the wind. I mean, the wind effects overall are amazing. Wind is used navigationally. The wind always gently blows in the direction of your mission objective or something you've marked on the map. You can also drag your finger up on the touchpad to make the wind stronger and give you a real clear, like it'll create little breeze marks that very clearly show you where to go. But I've found you don't actually need to do it. If you just follow all the little particle effects and leaves and the way the grass blows, you will get where you need to go. It's wonderful, actually. But my God, this game gets so bright and gorgeous. Whole forests where the yellow trees have fallen to create this golden carpet. The ability to climb mountains and look across the landscape with a super impressive draw distance. I think this might be the best looking game ever on the PS4. Not the best looking game ever, but the best looking game on PlayStation 4. I mean, there are technically more powerful games. I would imagine Death Stranding is... I would imagine some people would look at Death Stranding and say it's better graphically, but it doesn't have just the sheer gorgeous art direction that Sucker Punch has put into Ghost of Tsushima, and that makes a world of difference. Ghost of Tsushima looks breathtaking. It's got a real nice soundtrack and some solid voice acting, even though the voice actors, as I've said earlier, don't have much personality to work with. That initial lack of personality creates an opening sequence to this game that is rather dull. It's not until the game opens up and you get a lot more abilities and you really get a handle on combat that you find the game truly, or rather that I found the game truly gripping. But the moment I did, I fell in love with it harder and harder the more I played, and I'm thinking about playing it as I talk. Once this video's done, I will play some more of it. It's really good. It's the kind of game that makes you relish whatever comes next. You relish every opportunity for combat, every opportunity for stealth. Like I said, the stealth's fairly bog standard, and yet it's still fun. It's still really well put together stuff. It's so rare for me, as someone who has become so sick of open world games and so sick of the recycled content in them. Do you know what it takes for me to see a bandit camp in an open world game? One of the most boring, bog-standard, dreary, cookie-cutter features of an open-world game. I see a bandit camp and I think, oh, this is gonna be good. And on that element alone, reinstilling my faith in bandit camps, Ghost of Tsushima gets my highest possible accolade, a frog.